Most of you, if you heard Swami speak in the last couple of years of his life, remember that at times he would share a question that someone asked of him. And the question was, do I really need a guru? And Swamiji, when he talks about his first response, we're a little surprised because his response was, no, you don't need a guru. Absolutely, you don't need a guru. But if you really want to find God, you need a guru. And this is, to me, the essence of this question of the importance of a guru. Because for many lifetimes, all of us lived without a guru. For lifetimes, we didn't know, we didn't care. You know, we were living in what Anand described as this side of reality, and it wasn't important to us. But you are all here because at some point it has become important to realize that there is another reality in which we are truly free. And for me, this is another essence of this question, that we can know that the guru is the guide that is going to take us to our true freedom. The guru is the one who knows because he has lived the whole of existence from non-consciousness to cosmic consciousness. The guru is the one who knows what we need in order for us to arrive at that state of freedom that is cosmic consciousness and oneness with God. So really, it's up to each one of us to decide for ourselves how important is the guru for us. Because if he's not important to us, he's there waiting. He's there to help us get to where we want to go, but he won't impose. He will not impose that freedom on us. And until we are ready to say, this is what I want, he will wait. I wanted to use Swami's life a little bit as a model and example for us of how you receive, how you hold for yourself that importance of the guru in your life. And I wanted to start from the end of his life, of Swami's life, not from the beginning. I know that you have heard from Shurjo and from Narayani, who were present at that time, and you've heard from the various films of the days after Swami's passing, what happened. And there's a part of that I didn't share in the beginning because I wanted to feel within myself what the truth was of what I experienced, and I'd like to share that with you now. You know that in the last couple of weeks of Swami's life, he had not been out very much. He was in Italy with us, and he hadn't been out doing very much. He came to the Easter Sunday service, and he shared with us what he shared with all of you, which was his message of non-attachment. And he talked about how he didn't feel a great enthusiasm any longer for living in this world. He did not feel any real pleasure from anything in this world. And I remember someone in Italy asked the question, is Swami depressed? Because they couldn't imagine anyone with that expression of consciousness who wasn't depressed and not excited about life. But of course we know from the Bhagavad Gita and Krishna's description of the truly free man that Swami was talking from that consciousness of freedom, where his being did not resonate any longer with the vibrations of this world, and he was only looking at what was coming. And we also know that Master told Swamiji, and I'm trying to remember what exactly the words were, that you will find God at the end of your life, something of that nature. Swamiji did not take that statement for granted. He did not think, Master said, I will find God at the end of my life, so it doesn't really matter what I do. You know? He took that as the possibility of the probability, but that he would do everything that he could in this lifetime to realize that promise. And so in those last days, he was not still very active outwardly. He didn't have us over for tea as often as he usually did, but in the very final days, he invited a few people over for tea. And his way of being at that moment was quite different than he had been with all of you before and with us before. It was very similar to what he said about Master in his last days, where you could look into his eyes and there was presence, but he wasn't really present. He was beyond the presence of the situation and the people in that moment. And only if it was what the Guru was asking of him in that moment did anything happen. So he would talk to each one of us who was there, and it was clear that he was saying things that had some message, but I think most of us were not aware at that time of what those messages were. And the one that I remember most was that in his room where we were sitting, Swamiji had paintings that he really he had bought because he really felt a vibration, or he saw an energy that he wanted to have around him when he was at home. And I was sitting on a couch, and Swami was sitting in that position, and at one point he looked over my head at the painting that was above my head, and he looked at it and he said, "That's a lovely painting." And so we all turned around to look at the painting, and we knew the painting. It was one of those of a place that is very like paradise. You know, it has beautiful green like this, and it had beautiful sky. It was a lovely painting. But as soon as I turned around, I looked directly at Swamiji, and there was this twinkle in his eye, like, will you get caught in that? And only afterwards I thought, because he was so close, this was the night before he left his body, and only afterwards did I think that he was saying, this all can be lovely. And we know, I mean, for us, the beauty of this countryside at this time of year after the monsoons, and it's so green, it's so lush, and it's just beautiful. But will we get caught in that, in wanting that, rather than listening to the Guru, asking for the guidance of the Guru? Where do you want me to go? Where do you want me to be? I had an experience in the gardens of Ananda Village many years ago that gave me an incredible lesson in this way. we had a big garden with lots of vegetables, fruit trees, and we did a lot of composting in order to feed back into the soil. And it was having a really good effect on the land, so we were all happy to be composting. But one of the things that happens with a compost pile, and this was a compost pile about as big from Anand to the edge of this, and tall like this, and big around, and very long. And you have to turn the pile of the compost in order for the air to get into what's inside and decompose everything so that it's usable. So I was on the compost pile alone one day, and I was strong, doing the turning of this pile from here to over there. And I dug into a section of the compost pile that was really awful. It smelled. It was the essence of it was that it had growing in it maggots, which are the fly, the larvae, and they will turn into flies, but they were all in this. And I at that time I said, oh God, how awful. And I was talking to the maggots. I said, how can you stand it in there? And I continued to do the work. And at the lunch break, I was walking home. It was a beautiful day. It was blue sky, few puffy clouds. It was this time of year. And I was walking home enjoying the beauty of nature in that moment. And in my mind, like a light bulb that comes on in a cartoon, came the Divine Mother saying, how can you stand it there? And it was such an awakening, because in fact it was like Divine Mother's voice then said, you have no idea what is awaiting you. And I realized the maggots in that pile, that was their perfect milieu. They could grow in that. That was what they needed to be doing. But I saw it as terrible. Divine Mother sees what we are doing here. She knows that it's what we need to be doing right now for our growth, but she says, how can you stand it? You don't realize what is waiting for you. And this is what the Guru helps us to do. He helps us through the beautiful poetry that Anand was talking about, through his words, through his techniques and practices. He helps us to get a little taste of what is waiting for us until we get to the point where Swami arrived, which was that nothing else would satisfy. Nothing was as beautiful or as giving of God as actually being in God's presence. And so what I experienced when Swami left his body, after his last breaths, we were around the bed and we were in silence, meditating and just being in light and in that presence. And I experienced something that is difficult to put into words, and so I find phrases here and there of what are the teachings to help to describe it. There was a stillness, a complete non-movement, because of course Swami's breath had stopped, his heart had stopped, his mind, as far as the human consciousness, had stopped. And so there was no movement outward. What Anand was talking about, bringing it all in and up, had happened. Everything had been brought in and up, and Swamiji's consciousness had gone into the infinite. And how many times did Swami say to us in his talks, in the end, it all has to come back to zero. And zero is no movement, no ego, nothing that will keep you away from God. And in that moment, there was such a deep, deep feeling of that no ego, no outwardness, that I knew that Swamiji had come to that oneness with the divine. People ask that because, of course, the Master said, you will find God at the end of your life. And so people ask us, did it happen? Was Swami freed? And, there's no way, there's no machine that is going to measure for us whether Swamiji was freed in that moment. But I felt that is what had happened. I experienced something I hadn't ever felt before. The words that I can say it with seem inadequate, but I felt that he was no longer there as Swami Kriyananda, but that he had joined Master on the other side. For us, we've had a wonderful example of the importance of the Guru in one's life. Because Swamiji, as I said, he did not take for granted his Guru's words. He took every opportunity that came, the difficult things, the challenging things, the things that asked him to be able to do what most of us didn't have the courage to do on our own. And Swamiji simply accepted every challenge, the legal challenges, and every blessing as an opportunity to live more perfectly what the Guru wanted him to live. And if he had decided, I'm trying to think of an example of what he could have decided. His physical body, we all know that he suffered from difficulties in his physical body, and he never wanted to ask Master or Divine Mother to take that away from him, because he knew if that was coming to him, that was part of what Master meant when he said he would find God at the end of his life. He would be free at the end of his life. Every experience would be something that could help him reach that if he lived it in the right way. And so there was one experience that we had when Swamiji was in Italy some years ago, and he was not well. He was having difficulty walking, keeping his balance. He was still in his house mostly alone, and every once in a while he would get up in the middle of the night, and going to the bathroom he would fall, and he would injure himself, he would bruise himself, he would in some way hurt this body. And on this particular morning, he had fallen in the night, he had hit his head, and so we were getting ready to take him to the hospital so that he could be checked and see that there wasn't any serious damage. And he was sitting at the table where he normally sits to eat. There was something in front of him to eat, but he was like this, trembling. He couldn't eat anything. I think he asked Anand if he could make him some orange juice, and Anand went out. And at that moment, I, who was feeling, Divine Mother, why does he have to go through this? I started to say that. I said to Swamiji, in times like this, I asked Divine Mother, and I didn't get any farther. Swami said, don't say it. This body is Divine Mother's, and she can do with it whatever she wants. And I realized that that was his total freedom from attachment to the body. He might have to experience the pain. He might have to live whatever it was in that moment that the body was doing, but he didn't have to be attached to that. And this was his life for the last years that we knew Swamiji. Over and over again, he was showing us how to be free. He was showing us how his attunement with the Guru is what would make him free. His attunement to doing what the Guru put in front of him, what the Guru wanted for him, for his freedom. He lived that for all of us. When Swamiji made me a Kriya Charya, I don't know if anyone who is made a Kriya Charya really feels this is what I am supposed to do, or I'm ready for this. I didn't feel ready. This happened in one summer when he was visiting Italy, and I knew if Swami had done this, that this was right for me, that it was also for my growth, and perhaps for how I could help others. And yet I put it off. In Italy, our custom was that we had Kriya one time a year, and that was in the summer, around June. And this was in August, and I thought, okay, I have time. I have time to get used to the fact that I am going to be giving Kriya. And in the January of the following year, we went to the village, Ananda village, where Swamiji was. And we were in his living room with Jyotish and Devi, Durgan Vidura, and others. And Leela was making tea in the kitchen, and Swamiji got up from his chair, and he walked by me, going into the kitchen where the tea was being made, and he said, "I think you should give Kriya this weekend." So, I didn't say anything. Vidura, who was supposed to give Kriya that weekend, and Jyotish, who often gave Kriya, both came to me. They probably realized I was in shock, and they said, I have the outline for Kriya, and I can give this to you. And I can go over with you. You know, they were being very supportive, and I was there just thinking, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. I was surprised at myself, the resistance, and that's why Swami did it. Because there was a resistance, and he wanted me to get over that. Swami, for many of us, acted as the Guru, because it was more difficult to ignore Swamiji in the body than it is to ignore the Guru who is out of the body. And so often, I think, for many of you will have felt that Swamiji was acting as the Guru for you, and perhaps some of you now feel that he is your Guru. At that point, I spent a lot of time the next 2 days in seclusion getting ready for giving Kriya. And I gave the Kriya, and it was wonderful. It was a deep blessing. And of course, there were things that I could have done better. And when I called Swamiji afterwards and I said, thank you for the blessing of Kriya. And I said, I'll do better next time. And I said something about, I'll make sure that this and that. And he said, and the most important thing, your attunement with the Guru. The most important thing for him in anything that he did, whether it was giving Kriya or whether it was talking to people, was to do the will of the Guru, to be attuned to the Guru so that he could do what was the Guru's will. And for Swamiji, we all know, Shurjo mentioned it last night, the most important thing for him was to perfect his discipleship. It wasn't to become someone himself. It was simply to perfect his discipleship to Yogananda. And that is Swami's greatness. We will talk more this afternoon about what we have seen in Swamiji in terms of his discipleship with Master. We all have the same opportunity that Swami has and had in this lifetime. We all are the disciples of a great guru, the disciples of one who became one with God by doing what we are doing now and more. And this is our challenge. We have before us now, in this lifetime, the opportunity to attune ourselves more deeply to our Guru, to listen to what the Guru is asking us to do, not for him, not even for his work, but for ourselves. He wants us to be free. That is the desire of the Guru. That is the work of the Guru. And his importance in our lives is exactly that. How much are we going to allow the Guru? How far are we going to let him take us towards our freedom? And I hope that for some of us here, it will be as it has been for Swamiji all the way.